Daniel,
Yes,
I
sir.
appreciate you carving out some time in your schedule. So we have Daniel York with us today. You were part of the mighty Wolfpack during our 0608 deployment in the Diyala province, more specifically the Bakuba area. And, you know, just from every ground troop that was on the ground in Bakuba and Diyala province. First off, I'd like to just extend a thank you to you and all your fellow aviators and the ground crews, because there's a ton of people that have Wolfpack stories. And it would be nice to. It's great to one sit here and listen to the Wolfpack side of the house, and but it's also nice to sit here and thank you in person on behalf of all the ground troops that were in and around the Diyala province. So thanks for carving out this time with us.
No, absolutely. But I thank you for what you guys did. So what you guys did, you were the force. You were the main effort, right? And we were just there to support you guys. And I loved every minute of supporting you guys, even the bad times.
And there was definitely no shortage to
Yeah.
them. So before we get into the Bakuba fight, what I'd like to do is just let people know who Daniel is, right?
Okay.
Where were you born? What did your parents do for a living? What inspired you to join the military? And also, what inspired you to be an Apache pilot? And we'll take it from there.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna go back in the history books. I was born in Los Angeles, California. My mom is a flight attendant for Delta Airlines for a good portion of my youth. My dad was in the body business, had multiple body shops, that kind of stuff. Some family drama throughout the years, like all families have drama, right? So I was like, I don't want to be part of this anymore. So I joined the Army in 1993, came in as a MP, became a dog handler my last few years of being an MP. And then I got out in about end of 98, beginning of 99 is when I kind of got out of the military in 98, went into terminal leave into beginning of 99, and then left the service.
What made you want to join the MPs? What was appealing about that?
My family, I've come from a long line of police officers. My grandfather was assistant chief down there for the LAPD. I had uncles that were detectives. So long line of police officers on the Irish side of the house. And then on the Italian side, they did other things that we just won't talk about on this podcast, on this interview.
So MPs, where do MPs go to basic training?
So it was Fort McClellan, Alabama. So no longer an Army base. I think it's a National Guard training base now. It was Anniston. I did that, went there, did all my training there, and then first assignment was Germany. So,
Germany.
Yeah, 1994 Germany, which was great because I was like 18, 19 years old. Could drink there back then. During that time, you could drink. So it was great for a young 18, 19-year-old there.
Heck yeah.
To just go in the country, start drinking, have fun with the team, and experience Europe from a extremely poor PV2, PV3 BFC.
Was there any? Well, I mean, 94 going in. What was y'all's mission? What was y'all's focus?
So I was attached to 21st TACOM. So our job was like rear security as a line unit MP. That was, we did the typical law enforcement, where everybody hates the MPs.
Yeah.
That was us. So we did the law enforcement aspect of it, but in the combat aspect was just rear security, convoy escorts, that kind of stuff. And then I believe it was late 95. So in like summer of 95, we started Kosovo, Bosnia, all that stuff was kicking off. So we started getting involved with the UN. Did some UN security missions, so we did that for a little bit, and then we became I4. And then we helped do all the escorts and convoy securities from Europe into Bosnia through Croatia, Hungary, that kind of stuff. So we did that for about 6 months. And that was my first real world mission, peace enforcement, peacekeeping type thing.
Yep.
Then from there, left there, went to K-9 school, and then went to Fort Bragg.
How did you get tied into the candidate school to be a pilot?
So got out, was working on my police department application, and I got hooked up with the movie studios building TV sets and all that kind of stuff as a carpenter, did all that. And it was actually making pretty decent living. Enjoyed that. So I kind of stopped. I held off on the law enforcement thing. And then 9/11 happened. And during that time, it had been a couple months earlier, one of the guys that I was stationed with back in Germany was a recruiter out there in Los Angeles. We ran into each other. And he's like, "Hey, do you miss it?" I'm like, "Well, I don't miss, I got out as a sergeant. I'm like, I don't miss the pay. I don't miss, because I was making pretty decent living. And I'm like, I don't miss that aspect. I don't mean, having to be babysat or that kind of thing. I go, but I do miss the camaraderie. I miss the guys. I miss that kind of stuff." Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Well, would you ever come back in?" And I was like, "Well, I've always wanted to fly." He's like, "Well, let me tell you about this warrant officer program," right? So I was like, "Oh, all right, cool." Put in the back of my head, nothing. 9/11 happened. We're going to work down at CBS in the studios down in Santa Monica. 9/11 happens. And then, a few months later, we invade Afghanistan. And I'm like, all right, I'm going back in. So had to make some life choices, some decisions, get my life right, do everything I needed to do to get myself prepped, put my packet in. And about a year and some change later, I got picked up and came back in, didn't have to go to basic training, which was great. So in April of 2003, I got picked up in January of 2003. In March of 2003, went to Warrant Officer School, and that's when we invaded Iraq right around that time. It was like, what, April 3? I think time frame, give or take.
Yeah. So what were you doing specifically on 9/11? How did you find out, like,
commuting to work?
Life just changed.
Commuting to work. We were in my buddy's truck, Dan Hammer, and we were driving the truck. We commuted together. So 1 week I would drive, 1 week he would drive, because he lived right down the street from me. We were driving in. Reports were coming over the news that a plane had flew into the Trade Center. And so we're like, I'm thinking maybe fog. I'm thinking clouds. You have no idea because it's over the radio. I'm thinking, was it a Cessna? They didn't say what kind of plane. And then as we get in, so as we get into work, we go in and we look at the TV and we're like, holy crap, that was a significant event. And then you saw that it was clear blue 22 out, beautiful out. And you're like, okay, that was intentional. And then as we're watching that, then the second one hit and we're like, okay, something's going on. We're under attack. And at that point, a few days later, after the dust settled, I was like, all right, I'm coming back. I'm going back in because I want to go back in. I want to do my part. Because I had been peacekeeping, peace enforcement, and I really never felt satisfied that I kind of really had to do my mission.
Yeah.
And then that's when I went back in. And I, like I said, and then I went to Warrant Officer Way.
So did you know you wanted to be an Apache pilot? That's all I've ever wanted to fly. Locked in.
That was it. I had a little picture of an Apache, and I think it's called like the Deliverance or something. I don't remember exactly what the picture is called, but it's hovering over the wood. It's like kind of like an angle, pitched angle type thing. And I had a little cutout and I put it on my dashboard. So as I was doing my warrant officer packet, as I was driving to work, because I was doing, 12, 14-hour days, wake up early before I would go to work, go to the gym, go to work, do that 12-hour, 14-hour day, come home, do a little bit of studying, go to bed, do the same thing. Because and I was like, okay,
What kind of studying were you doing?
Well, I had to retake the ASVAB. I had to take the ASVAB, the flight aptitude test at the time. I had to take that. So it was like different steps. I'm like, all right, I want to max out my ASVAB, so I got to study for that. All right, boom, knock that one out. Okay, now I got to get ready for my flight aptitude test. All right, okay, knock that one out. Okay, now I got to make sure I'm in good shape, so when I go back to MEPS again, that kind of thing. So I
Yeah.
I had to do all that over again. So, but it was just next target, next 25-meter target, next 25-meter target. And then selection board came around and I wasn't picked up the first time, but I was qualified. So qualified non-select. Broke my heart. I was like, damn, man, that was a lot of work. I'm like, well, maybe it's not meant to be. And then January, we got picked up. We got the notification. I was like, all right, let's do it. My wife was excited because, she hated Los Angeles.
Where'd the wife come into the picture?
96. So I met her when I was stationed in Germany.
Okay.
So as I went to K-9 school, I flew her out to Los Angeles. We got married, started working. She was a German national, so we started working the paperwork process, and we have been married ever since. I think we're 29 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very, very good. We'll have to dig into your recipe for success at the end of this.
A very patient wife, but yes.
I forget who it was that I interviewed, and they said, yeah, a chief, all the dots represent like your marriages. And I was like, I said that funny, but unfortunately it's probably got a tinge of truth to it too.
There's just a hint of truth. Yeah.
Okay. So wife, but no kids?
No. So I've got 4 kids. I have a 31-year-old daughter. She is a mother of 2 now, but was Fayetteville PD for a couple of years. Was a forensic tech there and got sick of Fayetteville. So who wouldn't get sick of Fayetteville?
Right.
Yeah. We all know how bad that area can be. And then I've got a 25-year-old son who went to West Point, is in aviation and actually flies Apaches. Currently just coming back from Iraq as we speak. And then I have a 20-year-old son who's in the process of going into the military. And then I've got a 16-year-old boy who wants to either go Navy or Air Force and fly jets.
That speaks volumes for the way that you've led. That's pretty cool. Like having just the next generation wanting to step up and serve the country, man. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. So okay, so you have kids going into flight school then?
Yeah. So I had my son. So my oldest boy, he went through flight school when I was down there at Fort Novosel, actually, with my last job. So I had the opportunity. So this is actually a pretty cool full circle type stuff. So in the position I was in, I was able to get one of my previous senior instructor pilots, one of my mentor, kind of call my Apache dad, was Rusty Norris. And Rusty was my master gunner and SP as I was a young warrant. And I was able to get him to be my son's instructor pilot as he taught him how to be an Apache pilot. So he had 2 generations of Yorks to deal with in his cockpit, so my son calls him his Apache grandpa, which is actually pretty funny.
So he was still around though and my math isn't that good.
No, you're good.
But your son was born when you were going through Warrant Officer school.
No, so he was born in 98, right as I was getting out. So when I was going through Warrant Officer school, he was about 3 or 4.
But he was like at Novosel. Did you like move your family, or did they stay in Los Angeles?
When I was going through Warrant Officer school, we brought them all out. Yeah, so when you move there, you PCS there. So he grew up being around aviation. Like I used to, when he was 4 years old, we had a little joke. I was like, hey, Darian, what are Black Hawk pilots? And he's like, Black Hawk pilots are gay, So that was so as he went aviation, he's like, there's no way I can fly Black Hawks because my dad won't let me back in the house. I'm like, so
that's awesome. So like totally full circle. Like he's there. You're going through Warrant Officer school. You're going through flight school.
Yep.
You got your family on station, and you're chasing that dream.
Yep. And then he did the same thing.
So any no factor like warrant officer school and flight school, no factor, just breeze on through?
No, absolutely not. So it was a struggle for me because I was a little bit, long in the tooth compared to some of the kids I was going through flight school with. They were used to studying. I had not been in an academic environment for quite some time. So having to reteach yourself study habits and having to get back in the books was tough. But I had a lot of really good guys around me that helped me out. And then, but once it clicked,
Yeah.
you know, the flying aspect. I've spent my life riding dirt bikes, motorcycles. You know, I know we've talked about, you know, growing up on bikes and that kind of stuff. And it was just, I love the bikes. And I think it's an easier transition into something like that because the hand-eye coordination and all that kind of stuff. But learning how to fly was awful. I really did suck at it at first. Basically primary and instruments was tough for me. But then when I went to the basic combat skills and I was flying low in the trees and we were maneuvering the little Alpha Chuck helicopter, that's where it clicked for me. And that's where I was like, oh yeah, there's nothing else that I want to fly other than Apache.
But that's all OML driven though too, right?
It is. So my OML really sucked in the beginning. But as I transitioned to the basic combat skills, that's where I kind of started separating myself.
Okay.
And because it, like I said, I was still putting in the work. You know, I may not be the smartest guy in the room, but I'll definitely outwork some people. And I tell my kids that all the time. I'm like, you don't have to be the smartest guy, but if you outwork people, hey, that's all it's all about.
Yeah, I could probably be a testament to that approach as well. So how many people were competing for the Apache slots?
Oh man, I think it was like at that time we didn't have, like I said, there wasn't a bunch of people that wanted Apaches, but the guys that did were at the top of the class. So you really had, so I think, you know, 10. It was a small class. You know, at that time when we were going through, everybody was like, oh, you don't want to go Apaches because you're never going to fly. Oh, you don't want to go to Apaches because you only can go to so many duty assignments. Guys were picking aircraft based off of being able to go to Honduras, or they thought because they were Black Hawk pilots, they were going to fly a lot. Well, that didn't happen. So we ended up out flying a majority of my peers. I outflew the majority of all my peers.
Wow.
And now all the bases have Apaches. So it really, that argument went away too.
And no factor there either.
No.
Okay. You get your wings, right? You graduate. Yep. You're now an Apache pilot. Where's the Army's next move for you?
So as a baby Apache pilot, I went back to Fort Bragg.
Nice.
So it's a little bit of a cycle for me, and HRC has a sense of humor. So I went back to Bragg and show up there, and the unit that I have that I go to is an Alpha model unit. So this was the time where you had Alphas and you had Delta model Apaches.
And what year is that?
04.
Oh.
Yep. So 04 timeframe. I get there, I think we moved there at the end of November, beginning of December of 04.
So 04, you're in flight school. Now you're seeing Apaches operating in Afghanistan. You're seeing Apaches operate in Iraq.
Yep.
You're and now
super excited.
You're in the 82nd. Like,
yeah,
time to get some.
Yep. So I'm super pumped, super excited. But I get there and I couldn't fly at that point because, like I said, they had Alpha models and I wasn't an Alpha model guy. I was a Delta baby, we called it.
Okay.
So I was not able to get in that aircraft. So I did a little bit of sitting around for a little bit until we went to Fort Hood for UFTP. And then that's where I went there and did my progression with my company and went to Alpha Company 182, so Red Wolves. During that time frame, we were trying to figure out what our identity was. We went from 229 to 382, and then finally 182, and we're the Red Wolves. So first company, Red Wolves, we design our patch. We start doing, kind of like start building as a family. We got all the new guys are coming in, and you got a bunch of old timers.
Did the Wolfpack ever exist prior to that?
Yeah, they did. I think it was like in the early. So we had Panama. I think they were involved in Panama.
Okay.
And then they were 58s prior to that. So they were a 58 battalion, the original Wolfpack.
But the patch that you're wearing right now was designed pre-deployment.
No. So this patch actually was designed by Colonel Fee and the battalion staff when we went to UFTP.
Nice.
So this, and that's why I threw this one on. It's kind of like a throwback for the unit.
Yeah, I appreciate it because it's it just warms my heart.
Yeah, it does. It definitely warm. And I was just there a couple of weeks ago flying with some of the younger guys, and it's neat to see some of the legacy stuff still up on the wall and see how the unit's doing.
Yeah, so you get to this unit, you kind of get the brakes pumped, can't fly.
Yep.
Like, that's got to be like a little soul crushing a little bit.
It was, but there was a light at the end of the tunnel. We knew We were going to UFTP. I knew I was going to get progressed. I knew I was going to fly. We just had to wait a little bit of patience.
What did you know about these new Apaches?
So so we were getting the Deltas. Didn't really know that we were getting the MTADs. Nobody was really talking about it until we showed up, and then the MTADs was there, and then that's everybody was talking about. They're like, oh, this new MPIMVIS, new MTADs, this is incredible sensor, all that kind of stuff. So I progressed. So we had a few in the unit. So it was like a legacy aircraft or the MPIMVIS MTADs. So it was either hit or miss based off of maintenance, what aircraft you were going to get. But then at a certain point, all of our sensors were swapped out, and we had all of our aircraft had MPIMVIS and MTADs. So that's what I learned on.
Okay.
So
Fort Hood, you guys are there for like 9 months.
I think, yeah, but 9-10 months, yeah.
Wife and family stayed at.
Unfortunately, yes, they stayed at Fort Bragg, and then we went there, and it was focused training. What I liked about it was there was no other distractions. There was no other, like the 82nd wasn't messing with the battalion to go do dumb things or whatever. It was get your guys trained, train up on the individual tasks, the platoon level tasks, company level. Then get after the collective tasks. Do a live fire, and then get ready to deploy.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were basically building this unit. I don't want to say from scratch, but I mean, almost from scratch.
No,
right?
it was, it was intended. We were really undermanned when we were getting ready to go there, and then they started PCSing people into Fort Hood to get them trained up, and then we were at like 105, 110%. I don't know the exact per stats on what we were, but I know we were over strength. And what was great was in that battalion, all the companies had multiple W4s. Like I think there was like 3 or 4 W4s per battalion, per company, or W3s that are promotable that were going to pin W4. Yeah, so as a young W1, you couldn't do anything wrong without getting slapped in the back of the head. Right. So that was what made us, some of my peers, that's what made us who we are today, is because of that. Shaped us.
Yeah. Now, how many chiefs or chief warrant officers are typically in a company?
I think it's 18, if I'm not mistaken. So we got 8 birds, so about 16.
Oh, okay.
16 to 18, depending on the size, when they're fully manned. And then you have a couple platoon leaders. You have 2 platoons, 2 platoon leaders, and then a company commander. In that company commander section, you'll have your TAC ops officer, you'll have your SP, and then your safety officer, and then each platoon has a maintenance test pilot with all your regular pilots. So that's kind of how it's broken down per the MTO.
So when you guys left Fort Hood, you guys were above 100% strength,
Yep.
You reckon?
Yep, absolutely.
That's a nice position to be in.
It is. And we knew we were going to Iraq. So, it was determined that, hey, you guys are going to go to Iraq at this timeline. As soon as you get back from UFTP, you'll have a few months home on station, and then you're going. So that was always the end state, and we knew what was going on.
How'd your family prepare?
They just dealt.
They just dealt with it?
Dealt with it. It was tough.
Like 9 months away, then you guys come back for a couple months, and then like just knowing that you're gonna get launched over to Iraq. So
yeah,
let me just, and I haven't really asked a lot of people this, but the family readiness group inside the Wolfpack, was that firing on all cylinders as well?
That's funny that you said. My wife to this day still says the FRG group, or the family readiness group. So the FRG was probably one of the best FRGs that she has been a part of since. Even, and we've been, 23, 24 years. The relationship that she had with those women in the company, it was tight. Still talks to some of those women. And it was across all the companies, and even within the battalion. They were a really tight niched group.
I totally believe that. Just seeing the way you guys still function, from years ago to this day, I would have no doubt that carried over from the FRG. I think just something as a first sergeant, like I took over as a company first sergeant in Kuwait. I didn't get to train up with the unit whatsoever. And something that I never really put a whole lot of like thought into it, because really I wasn't married the majority of my military career.
Mm-hmm.
But the FRG, right? It's just like, oh, the FRG. And, I was through a couple marriages too, but like the FRG wasn't like part of, and there wasn't a war happening. But taking over a company in Kuwait before we went into Iraq and not having that relationship with FRG was something, if I could wind back the wheels of time and try to influence something, it would be getting to know the FRG, because like when there's that amount of death and destruction during a deployment and you have to talk to the FRGs, it's pivotal that, like, one, it's a good solid FRG, and two, you actually know who's in it, and you've built that relationship before crisis hit. So just curious. I mean, a 9-month deployment to, in stateside, but still it's like, families are families, and they have to be connected and informed. So
And then they rely on each other too, like things go wrong, and they've got somebody they can fall by. Hey, the younger wives can talk to the older wives who have possibly gone through this. Hey, how do I deal with this? What do I need to do? And they're helping they're that support network, because we've got the support network, when we're deployed, because we have each other, right? And they need that. And and one thing my wife was really, really good about was, no matter how bad it got at home, like issues with the kids or the house or whatever, never let me know. Would never wanted to distract me when I was doing my job, because she realized how important it was. That's one, and to this day she's still the same way.
That's what makes a good Army wife. And my wife too. She just like the distractions, because she knows it's already tough enough. Yeah. Like we've got enough things to worry about. So you guys get deployed and you link up with the 101st.
Yep, link up with the 101st. We start doing the RIP. So that's taken place. Move into our rooms. Those guys moved out. We move into our rooms. We go out there. They start giving us the LAO, just kind of giving us an understanding of the battle space that we'll be operating in, showing us, we're getting an understanding of like, hey, they got a bunch of no-fly areas that they wouldn't even fly into. So we're like, okay, interesting, no-fly areas. Their engagement count was kind of low.
Did they elaborate on the no-fly areas? Like, what's up with that? Why?
So they when they admit, and this is a long time ago, they weren't talking about this. I believe it was in the and I could be wrong, but I think it was talking about because they would receive, because we're flying low, tactics were different. They received a lot of battle damage when they would fly over those areas. They'd come back with holes in the blades, holes in the stabulator, that kind of stuff. So they just stopped, avoid flying. Plus, at that time, and I think it was the 101 guys that were on the ground too, they were supporting their own. And I could be wrong, but they were, or was it 4th Infantry Division? I don't remember. All I know is those guys really didn't go into like Bakuba, and they didn't go into those areas and do clearing operations. It was more of a contain and sustain. And I know you guys had to deal with that ramification when you went in there and started clearing out.
Yeah, something that I didn't realize. I didn't put 2 and 2 together until we started the Debrief project. But one of my very first, actually it was the first, I was talking to Grey Wolf 9, and he's like, well, they were preparing to draw down, and then it's like, nope, we're going to shift, and because 3rd Brigade 1st Cav actually was the brigade ready reserve, or excuse me, the theater ready reserve. Like, we weren't even scheduled to go into Bakuba or anywhere. For all we knew, we were going to do a 12-month deployment and stay in Kuwait. Right. But that quickly changed within weeks of me getting over there. We got the heads up that we're going to go to Bakuba. So I think there was some discussions that, like, let's not fully invest in this area because we may just be turning it over, which obviously that didn't come to fruition either. So so the 101st, not a super kinetic tour for them?
No, it wasn't. They had missiles that, you'd probably heard this multiple times, but they had missiles that had been on the rail for hundreds and hundreds of hours. So as started shooting them later, we discovered, they were doing some crazy Ivan stuff. They'd go straight up in the air, they'd go right, they'd explode, 200 meters off the nose of the aircraft. So
It would explode 200 meters?
Some of them, they just fly and they'd explode, right?
Wow.
And it wasn't a lot of them. But it was a few. It was enough to be concerned. So we started swapping off helm fires and putting newer ones on. And then I believe Rusty, one of his big pushes was to get the team out there to kind of like rebuild some of those old missiles and go through and kind of clean them up so we could utilize them.
Well, you guys are, I mean, heck, talk about like not having confidence in your weapon system then, right? Like if you're shooting missiles, or did it just quickly like, oh, these things have long outlived their usefulness riding on these pods?
Yeah, because we had, extremely talented, leaders in the right place, with Rusty up there or, some of the leadership. They were able to kind of like understand what the problem set was. So they were able to get the old ones off the rails and get us new ones. So it gave us the tools to be successful. And like I said, we really didn't figure that out until later down the road when we started shooting a lot.
Up to this point, I mean, you're still a fairly new pilot, right?
Yeah, I'm brand new.
So how much like trigger time, like how many like missiles had you fired up to that point?
0.
Really?
So my first missile ever fired was in an actual engagement. So
check.
To this day, it was
nice.
Yeah, I was super nervous. You could hear it in my voice. It was a vehicle, I believe. Somebody had their like the mayor of one of the villages or one of the key leaders had their house overrun, their compound. So, and these guys were all fleeing the compound, and we looked out. We get the grid, they hand over the grid. They're like, hey, they're this direction. So we find the house and then kind of like search this open field, and we see there's like 40 or 50 guys just running all over the place. And you're like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. That was my first missile engagement.
Okay.
So
first time shooting a missile in combat.
Yep.
I assume it had a good ending for you and a bad ending for the ones on the receiving end?
For the missile engagement, it was good. For the rest of the engagement, not so well. My first engagement was textbook. I did everything I was supposed to, did what my master gunner taught me, my SPs taught me, boom. Textbook, everything was good. The second one, not so much. The second one got a little sloppy, and then I had to do some remedial training as a young warrant officer to remedy that situation. So,
was that with the missile or was that with the 30 millimeter?
No, that was the 30 Mike. The missile was good. The 30 Mike was not pretty.
Yeah, it's.
I let the adrenaline get the best of me. I use it as a teaching point to this day on what not to do on your first engagement. So
that's it.
You just got to laugh at yourself.
I love it. So the 101st, they've got their no-fly zones. You guys are there. You just carry over, not knowing, like when in Rome, just do what the Romans are doing, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're flying low, and you guys start flying low. And I know that there was a shift in tactics sooner rather than later. Do you have like some like Sentinel event that one? Well, okay, let me ask you this. When did it become real for you? Like like, hey, they're playing for keeps, and this is.
So I think there's two. I think I said there's a 2-part question I like to answer in the aspect of when we started coming back with a lot of battle damage. We had the patented Patriot pitchback turn. When he took rounds in the transmission,
legendary.
Legendary. And then we started. Rotor blades were getting shot up. Our Robbie tanks, we were getting bullets in the Robbie tank, so it wasn't able to allow us to stay on station as long because we didn't have that the fuel, that extra fuel cell that we needed. I remember as a young W2 sitting in our talk. And it was our SPs and Brigman, our company commander, Captain LaValle at the time, And then we had an XP with us, which was it was an interesting dynamic because I'd never seen an XP on a deployment before. But he was there to, I think, validate and get test data for the new MTADs and MPIMPS, Major Bailey. So they're sitting there and they're talking and they're like, hey, man, and the conversation came up like, hey, with the CMOS that we have, so the counter missile warning system on there, how do we come up in altitude? How does that work? What do we need to do to be able to come up in altitude? So he pulls out these books, and this is no kidding. I watched him do this. Pulls out these books, starts doing the math stuff, starts figuring it out, looks at what we're getting shot up with, and comes up with an altitude about 700 to 1,200 feet. And he says this is the optimal altitude to fly at to maximize your coverage for your missile warning system, but also get you out of the range of small arms. And then we were shifting from days to nights. And I'll never forget this. We go from days to nights, and now we're flying high, so we're not having to maneuver the aircraft hard left, hard right. So allowed as a front seer for me to get on the sensor more. And then we're traveling down to, the Bakuba area, getting down in the area, and we're on Tampa. And we're offset a little bit and looking on Tampa, and we're picking out dogs on the road 20 Ks out. We're picking out all sorts of stuff, and I'm like, okay, this is incredible. This is incredible what it's allowing us to do. And then I believe it was like the next day we're going out there and we find IED placers, right? So we find these IED placers. We're 18 Ks out. We call up to the battle space owner. We let them know that, hey, we've got suspicious activity, this grid, possible IED placers. They're like, all right, stand by. All right, we have nobody in the area. We get closer. We're like, definitely IED placers. Give us the clearance to engage. We set up. Now we're like 10 Ks. So we're like, okay, well, I gotta get closer. So what do? At about 8 Ks, we shoot a missile. And that's the longest 36 seconds of my life. This thing is taking
That's
forever,
out there.
right? And then about 3 to 4 seconds prior to impacting, this guy starts to do some stuff and get up to run, and we got to move the line of sight. So, but that was like really when you're like, oh man, this MTADS is incredible. This is a game. So our company as a whole, we all came up in altitude. And then I remember over CTAF, so we'd have these coalition calls that you'd make, hey, coalition traffic, Red Wolf, 1-3, flight of 264, southbound on Tampa, coalition traffic, right? We'd give our altitude as well. And you'd hear like, bark, bark, chicken noises over the radio. Guys were making fun of it because we were up high. Because they thought we were scared, right? Giving us a hard time about it. And we're like, all right. But then we started shooting. And then we started shooting some more. And then we started shooting some more because we were able to see it. Right. And because we were able to see it, if you can see it, you can shoot it, right? I tell my guys all the time, if you can see it, you can shoot it. If you can't find it, you can't kill it. Right. So that enabled that is when I kind of realized, okay, this is going to be a different fight for us, right? Yeah, it's a game changer. Yeah, it really is. And then you started getting the troops in contact, the ticks, and then it started picking up, and it was like a tick after a tick after a tick. And every time you were going down there, something's going on. This tick was happening, or we just not had an IED strike, or hey, there was a catastrophic IED strike, and the crew from the Bradley was killed. And then you're like, okay, this is serious. This shit's getting real now. So
they did not know that what you guys could see, right? Like no, they're like
had no clue.
Just not comprehending the change in tactics. I think that's pretty interesting that you get a little bit of like pushback for changing tactics, but like what's there's a perceived threat and then there's a legitimate threat, right? It's not like you guys are getting surface air missiles shot at you every day, but you're coming back with holes in transmissions and rotor blades and, so you guys do a shift in tactics and you start getting some payback or payoff, right? In this. Was that across the board, across the battalion? And was anybody taking notice of hey, what's shifting? Why are you guys engaging so much? Because here's the deal. The other unit, they didn't do a whole lot of shooting. now you guys are, was it like, hey, enemy activity has changed, therefore there's more targets on the battlefield, or is it like is anybody questioning like why are you guys doing so much shooting? The other unit didn't.
No, so I think it was what. So it was. It came down to a couple of things. I think at first the battalion hadn't in a whole shifted. It was just our company, and then people started taking notice that hey, Red Wolves are shooting, and the other companies were shooting, but not as much.
Yeah.
And but so then everybody started to come up in altitude, and then everybody across the board started shooting a ton. And that's really when the overall as a battalion, I think people started taking notice. But mind you, I'm a PI. I'm like that infantry Joe, in a squad. I really don't know what's going on at the battalion level.
Yeah.
I'm getting briefed on the area that we're operating at. I understand that. I understand the threat out there. My focus was very, hey, I'm right now, front seat is my job, and I've got to be good at being a front seater. And that's kind of like, so like what was going on with like higher headquarters and all that, I had no clue.
What about rules of engagement? Like did JAG, what about rules of engagement? Did like JAG, did they come down and brief you guys at like?
Yeah. We had vignettes. So JAG would come down, you would have an ROE brief. You would have these vignettes. So little stories of like, hey, do you shoot? Do you not shoot? That kind of stuff. And they would give us those briefs. And then every time you'd get a brief, you'd kind of a little bit more understanding. Some of us took it on their own to kind of like really go through the ROE and just read it to understand it. And then as you started shooting, you got a little bit more comfortable. The first time you shoot, you're really nervous.
Yeah.
Hey, you're like, all right, am I doing everything right? Are these the guys that I should be shooting? I got the weapon system. Is this the correct weapon system to use? Am I doing everything within confines of the ROE? And then as you start shooting more and more, you're like, okay, you get comfortable with that. So then you start pushing the ROE a little bit, hey, and then as you understand it more, it just makes you a better attack pilot. So yeah, and then as the mission continued, we were always getting updates of the ROE. We're always getting, hey, more vignettes. We would watch our own gun tape as a platoon. We'd critique each other,
Nice.
And we'd like, hey, look at this, look at that. So you understand what they're doing, because what they're doing in the daytime could be completely different at night. So just a little bit of crosstalk.
Yeah. What about like ground to air coordination? How did that start to evolve for you guys?
So here's a really, I love this one. So I had never talked to a JTAC before in my life, right? And when we started working with the ground guys, I never did. Iraq, I think I had one incident with a JTAC. So we were talking to, would talk to an E4, talk to a sergeant on the radio, talk to a platoon leader, company commander, battalion commander. We really didn't matter who we were talking to. It was just, the coordination was, hey, you and me sitting here right now, and we're talking about, we want to shoot some targets over there. That's really how it came down to it. And I remember, so there was a IED strike convoy, platoon leader's vehicle was hit, RTO, the platoon leader was killed, RTO was on the radio, and he was just completely distraught, right? So get on the comms with him, and I'm like, hey, listen, I'm like, what vehicle? I'm like, what vehicle are you in? He's like, in the convoy. He's like, I'm the third vehicle. I'm like, okay, from your direction of the convoy, where did you think you saw the spotters? And he's like, to my right. I'm like, how many football fields do you think it is from your position? And he's like, 2 football fields. I'm like, okay, we're going to come in and we're going to do, we're going to put some 30 mic down in that area. Let me know if that's the area. Okay, man, we rolled in, put some 30 mic. He's like, that's the area. I'm like, all right, we got this. Do what you need to do. So, and that was it. It was just plain English.
Yeah.
Now you fast forward to like 19 and 20, and it's 5 lines, it's 9 lines. You're doing check-ins. It's all brevity. Completely different animal. But what allowed us to do that back then was, hey, we're a maneuver element. So that's one thing about the 64s. We're a maneuver element. I felt like we're the 5th platoon. we're your fifth platoon, right? So you've got your 4 platoons, and you've got your mortar team, right? And you've got your infantry guys, and then you have your fifth platoon, and that's the Apaches. And that's why I think we worked so well together, is because we were able to integrate to whatever you were doing, and it didn't require those extra layers of control to be able to get our ordnance off the aircraft.
Yeah, it's again complicated environment.
Yeah.
Why make it more complicated, right?
True.
And it still speaks to that flexibility that keeps surfacing. Every debrief that we do, whether it's a ground guy or an air aviator, it's like, what was one of the recipes to success? And it's like the flexibility, right? Like, and not being set in your ways to where you just start missing the main thing. Like the main thing is, let's get rounds on target. I don't care how it happens. Let's do it safely and effectively, right? So to be able to shed that, and just the whole thing, keep it simple, right?
Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah,
that's what I'm about. And that's specifically for me. I got to keep it simple.
So December for us, like December was a time where things really just started escalating and going from a semi-permissive environment to like straight kinetic. And we call it the descent into chaos. A lot of sectarian violence and a lot of coordinated attacks on American forces. Did you see anything November, December timeframe that sticks out in your mind?
It was so, it blurs together. But I do remember just the ambushes, the complex ambushes. I remember coming down Tampa, and we discovered a large ambush site that had set up. It was going to use the IED as a trigger to conduct that ambush. Then we found them hiding in the woods, the wood line. And then, but it was complex. You had the IED that they were going to use to stop it. And then you had guys in, the fields of fire, different areas for the fields of fire. They had crew served weapons, all that kind of stuff. And then that's when you're like, okay, this isn't a pickup game. This isn't just some dudes, in man jammas in sandals throwing, AKs running out in the middle of the street and shooting and screaming Allah Akbar. This was, okay, this is somebody they're planning this with a specific purpose.
Yeah, it was definitely different. Definitely different from my first tour in December. They started with some harassment. Well, first they legitimately did a coordinated attack on multiple areas throughout the Diyala River Valley and overran a lot of IP stations. And then our war dog element went down, and these cats even flew an Al Qaeda flag once they overran it and blew up half of it and like killed everyone else that was in it. But they flew an Al Qaeda flag over the outpost, and our war dog element goes down. They take it back. And then we eventually, a couple of weeks later, we do a relief in place with them. But that wasn't just one area. That happened in multiple areas. And it's just like, okay. Shortly after we took it back, they did a very deliberate attack to try to overrun it with the American forces occupying. And that was a eye-opening day for us, because it started off just like harassing fires, maybe a couple mortar rounds, but then it just started to gain in volume, and the mortars were getting more accurate. So the thing is that day, like the insurgents knew if there was a ton of clouds, you guys weren't going to be flying. And it was, so their mortars started getting more and more accurate because they didn't have to shoot and scoot. Like they had the ability to sit there and adjust fire, drop a couple more rounds, adjust fire, and the next thing you know, like all hell's breaking loose. We got machine gun fire, precision small arms fire, mortar rounds coming in, and that was like just a sustained effort. And fortunately, the weather did break later that day, where Wolfpack came in and gave us some assistance. But that was, I think, that, and there was another operation that we called the political party raids, where we did a operation on the Shia political party. Went in, had a bunch of RPGs, machine gun, things that shouldn't be in a political party building, and captured a bunch of dudes, and we brought them back to Warhorse. And as that's happening, I guess the Sunnis were watching and like, hey, the Americans just disarmed this whole building. They went and blew the building up, and it's just like, okay, this is so that happened like a week before, I think, the maybe a couple weeks before they tried to overrun the outpost. But December was that time where it's like, okay, things have definitely shifted, and we're not going to be able to operate like the other unit did. Yeah. Right? It's just
definitely
like,
didn't have the freedom to maneuver through the battle space like the other guys did.
the unit, when we were there, one of the big things that they did when we were doing our right seat, left seat rides was mosque monitoring. It's like, what are you monitoring mosques for? And it was just one of those things where I think they were getting ready to. It just seemed like they were on a different mission than we were. Like when we got there, we started doing combat operations, and kind of the same thing. We were told, we don't go down that area, or we don't go over here. And it's like, we're the United States Army. We'll go where we want to go. And it turned out that a lot of those areas that they didn't go in, the enemy, they took advantage of it, right? And that became their safe haven. And it's like, okay, we'll give that to you on loan, but we're going to be back for it. And it was one of those things where, unfortunately, a lot of those areas that we had not been in before, when we tried going into those areas, the resistance was. The resistance was one of those things where it shouldn't have been that difficult, and we didn't have enough. We just didn't have enough forces on the ground to do anything where it was worth the effort. Like if we were to be able to push down in Southern Barrettes, that's great. We could push down Southern Barrettes. We're probably going to lose 3-4 Bradleys. Maybe have a couple killed in action, maybe have a couple wounded in action. But as we push down, we're not going to be able to hold anything when we get there. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, we made it, but what's the long game? So we had to be very, that tactical patience thing, comes in, and having, like, we were to a point where, just when we became landowners with the Barrett's IP station, then we had the government center, but we had like battle space from Zagania all the way down to Barrett's. Right. One company. Yeah. It's like, how do you do that? And it was eventually we gave up certain areas, and we had to focus like the Bakuba, the Barrett's area, and Tahrir. But I think, and I hadn't asked this question in the other ones, but as the battlefield started to kind of solidify initially with us out at our outposts, it just seems like more insurgents were flowing into the area. And, the only way that we were able to, I think, have any level of success was you guys. Like out there at the Brits IP station, and I think you guys called it like nutsack or the ball sack, and the Brits IP station was in a very tactical, disadvantaged location. Like everything that you want to have for a defensive position, this wasn't, you know, and it wasn't really built to be like a tactical site. It was built to be an IP station. So, but you know, we kind of inherited what we had and was making the best out of a bad situation. But the one thing that absolutely drained us was there was only one entrance in and there was one bridge. Like if they were to blow that bridge up, like us to be able to evacuate casualties, you know, get resupply, everything would have just been, you know, and you're not going to land a helicopter in Barrett's. That just, not intentionally.
No, not on purpose. There was no HLZ there.
And the reason why I share all that is because there was one point in time where we were in survival mode. And I don't want this to sound like a pity party because we were fucking dudes up, right?
Yeah,
like we're taking it to the enemy, but we're so spread thin along that, like trying to oversee our exfil route or our MSR because we had to do that, right? So the Wolfpack, specifically coming into sector and being able to help us is one of those things that I don't think we would have been anywhere near as successful as we were with what we had if you guys had not cracked the code on the communications down to like squad level, surgeon, and doing, like, you guys would do like hunter killer teams too, right? Like even if there wasn't something going down, you guys would spend time in and around Bakuba.
Oh yeah, we would just go out there. Just if there was no mission going on, we would just go do battlefield circulation, and we were just looking. Like, you know, there were a lot of things that we found on our own that, you know, you guys may not even been involved in, just in that area, just because, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, it's you know, it's dead out. So we want to actually go out there and find something to keep busy. So that's kind of like what we would do. Yeah. So it was just one of those things.
Yeah, it was amazing because there was multiple occasions where, you know, either you guys turned us on to something that we did not see, or we got into something and it's like, okay, we need Big Brother. Yeah. And, you know, we'd break squelch and you guys were there and we're already there on station, or you're there rather quickly. I shared a story in the Brits IP station where one of our scout element who was attached to my company went out to do a ambush, and they got compromised, and the enemy slipped in behind them and has effectively cut them off from being able to get back to the outpost, and they pushed them further and further south. Very deliberately under fire. They're escaping and evading because they're being pursued, and they didn't have long range radio capabilities to a point where, you know, they didn't have comms with the outpost anymore. Right. And the only thing that saved their ass was Apaches over top, acting as a retrans, and communicating back to us. And then the other thing was the Apaches were able to identify a landing zone for Black Hawk to come in and extract that team. But you know, do you have any air ground recollections of anything of that nature?
So I have. So there was a couple of times we were doing convoy security, especially as you guys were going from like outpost to Warhorse or something like that. And I remember on the radio talking to the lead driver and giving him a turn by turn on where to go to get to a specific location, because I believe as they were going down the road there was blockades. Remember when they started burning the tires? Yeah. Oh, yeah. They started burning the tires, so they were burning the tires, so we gave them like a right turn, a left turn, you know, and you're looking and you're like, okay, you know, and doing kind of like a route recon type thing and giving them the turn by turn, you know, in modern day ways, right? To get to the outpost. And those were fun because you could, you know, you're just, all right, come left, all right, you know, 200 meters, you're going to make a left-hand turn, keep eyes on the right, and then as a team, we're looking for any choke points, we're looking for anybody setting up as an ambush, and then get to the, I I think, man, was it Disney? What was one of those little outposts? Was it Disneyland?
Yeah, initially in Truro they called it Bone Disney,
Yeah, okay, so it was
and then
Bone
it
Disney.
shifted to Bone or Coppa Adam.
Yeah, so it was Bone
Eventually,
Disney. It was going to Bone Disney. So because they had set some tires up and there was a fire, and they're like, all right, we're going to avoid that. Because remember, the TTP was at that point was the fires were used to warm up the asphalt, and then they would dig the asphalt up, throw the IDs in there, cover it back up,
Yeah.
or get them to stop, and then they were going to get ambushed. So we did some turn by turn stuff. Those were I would say fun, but it was rewarding.
How about ground to air fire? Did you take any ground to air fire?
Yeah, quite a few rounds. I know we had some stabilator damage. We had tail boom, some holes from a tail boom, tire blown out. We had a bunch of holes in our Robbie tanks, blades, but you really didn't. Like I said, it sounded like rocks are getting thrown at your aircraft, and you hear that, the tick, 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 the rock, like pebbles against the canopy type thing. And all it does is piss you off. You're like, how dare they shoot at me? So then you got to find them, trying to find the guys that are trying to shoot at you, which was kind of difficult because they'd come out, fire, and then go back in.
Yeah, they're pretty good at that.
Yeah, they were.
So surface to air, like missiles. You guys had an engagement like that, or somebody got engaged with the surface to air?
Yeah, I believe it was White Wolf, John Hamey, and Colonel Cyrillic. They took a missile shot, which I think was one of the first ones for the battalion at that time. I got a missile shot at them, and that really opened your eyes to like, okay, hey, CMOS is working. Our missile warning systems are working. They're doing their job. At that time, we were having a lot of false declarations, meaning they would just go off just because certain flash of light. But as time went on, they adjusted that, and we started carrying more flares down at our FARP down that we'd set up at Warhorse down there, and we would just change them out quickly because we had our armament dogs down there supporting us.
I know Colonel Fee had a policy where he was asking, or aviators would be showing up at our memorial services. Were you ever part of that?
Yeah, I think I went to 4 or 5, and that's where I think we initially met. Because when I mentioned a few days ago, it wasn't the book. I think it was one of the memorial services, and it was one of the ones. I think it was like 6 or 7, where it was I think a Bradley, either a Bradley, I believe it was. Wasn't a Striker yet, but had that one, and then there was a couple twosies that we went to where it was 2 or 3 guys. But yeah, we would land, shut down, go to the memorial service, be there for the memorial service, get back in the aircraft, go fly the mission. It becomes personal then.
Very much so.
It becomes really personal then.
And I think that's, again, like when I say that, I interview people and they have the Wolfpack stories, more often than not, that left an impression on a lot of people, because it kind of that like team aspect, right? It's not just like, hey, some unknown people, like we're talking to you guys in the air, but to actually see you guys on the ground at Warhorse in your flight suits at our memorials, like we knew you guys were the pilots, right? It's just like, okay, that's cool, man. You guys are like all in. Oh, yeah. And I think that's really, I mean, geez, I don't know why I haven't really connected that before, but I think that's kind of the impression that we all had, was you guys were just all in on that fight very specifically. Because like I said, when we broke squelch, you guys were more often than not there. Or if we needed y'all, like, hey, we're requesting our weapons team on station. There was no like layers of bureaucracy you had to crawl through to get air support. It was, make it easy type deal. So
yeah, well, it was, you were slotted for a 3-hour mission. We know we were never going to fly a 3-hour mission. We'd go there, we'd request an extension was approved. We'd request extension was approved. We knew the battalion was going to back us 100%. And if we were requesting an extension, it was because you guys needed us, right? And that was it. There were times, I think my longest flight was like 9.5, 10 hours. We had to get an extension and crawled out of the aircraft, and my legs were numb. Because, in that front seat, you had a tight seat belt, you're cramped, you're peeing in multiple water bottles, that kind of stuff. Dehydrated because you're trying to not want to pee, but you got to pee and drink water. So it's this fine line of dehydration and that kind of stuff. I'm not complaining, but that was the norm. My right eye is blurry because I can't see any, because you're on the HDU the whole time just hunting, but it wasn't work. It was just what we did because you guys were on the ground. You were doing what you needed to do, and we wanted to make sure that you guys were safe.
Yeah.
That's what it came down to. It wasn't about glory. We didn't care. We didn't want medals or want recognition. It wasn't about that. It was just to make sure, because I hated going, excuse my French, I hated going to those fucking memorials. Yeah. It did nothing but piss me off. Because you'd see the faces and and then the roll call, the fucking roll call kills me.
Yeah.
That's the hardest one. And that's why, it was easy to be aggressive. It was really easy to do extra trigger pull to make sure that we didn't wound anybody. That we, when we started pulling trigger, it was very easy to continue to fire until there was nothing left. Because you wanted to make the next guy think twice about picking up a weapon.
Yeah. It's, wow. How many hours did you wind up flying that deployment?
Just over 1,200.
Just over 1,200.
Yeah. I was stick pig.
Stick pig, huh?
There was a few of us that were, very competitive. But I flew as much as I possibly could, because if I wasn't in the aircraft, I felt like I wasn't doing my job. So it was the most I've ever flown on a deployment. None of my other deployments came even close. Afghanistan, 800 hours, another one, a couple hundred hours, 700 hours on another one. So that one was just, every month you're talking to the doc, hey, I'm good, because you got to get a medical, release from the doc to fly over 100 hours.
Yeah.
You'd lie on your crew tracker. We had to track our hours for crew rest and stuff. You're lying on your crew rest. My old SP just walked in.
So you guys are grinding it out, stacking up hours, 15-month deployment. Get the heads up. Hey, we're gonna go extra innings. What was some of the challenges there? Or no factor.
Honestly, it was. So I found out from my wife via an email that, hey, I heard you guys were just extended, because I don't think any of us knew until we showed up at the talk, because that's when old GW announced it on the surge. Remember, we're gonna do 15. Yeah. So she was supportive. So then we went out there and we flew a mission, and it was kind of a quiet flight. I remember when you found that out, but nobody was upset. None of us were pissed off or angry or anything, because we were doing our jobs. We're the first time ever that I'm actually out there doing my job, what I've been trained to do.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, and we laughed about it. Was it with the 7 levels of denial? Do you remember this video that came out? It was like the guy, the giraffe in the quicksand, and there was like 7 layers of like denial or regret, and it was like denial, regret, anger. It was all these different things, emotions, right? All the emotions. I don't remember the exact what it was, but that meme or video was going around, and everybody was laughing about it because it was true. At first, you're like, "What the hell?" And then you're like, "Okay," and then you just like acceptance. You're like, "All right, it is what it is. Let's go back to flying."
I'm gonna have to dig that video up and put it in this part. All right, so you guys are on notice. We still don't have the strikers in sector, right?
No.
Hey, they wound up coming in late March, at least the 520 guys. Anything significant when the 520 guys come up in?
Yeah, they were in La La Land, denial. because remember they came from, was it Mosul down to Baghdad, and then if I'm not mistaken, I think Baghdad up to us, and everywhere they'd gone had been pretty much of a cakewalk. So you're advising them, hey, listen, we've been fighting this out for the last 4 or 5 months, advising them what was going on, and it just didn't seem like it was resonating within the command or whatever, until they started losing strikers.
Yeah.
And they started ripping those things like beer cans in half. How many strikers did you see at Warhorse that were stacked up because they were just, and then each one of those strikers that was destroyed had lives associated with it.
Yeah.
And at that point, that's when I think they realized that, oh man, this is the fight. This is where the fight is.
Yeah. And a couple of them had, during various conversations, they said they didn't have the intelligence picture. And that's something that we boil down. It's like, how did they not know like what was going on in Bakuba? And regrettably, and the fog of war, I don't know. It's like, but when they came up in there, and they've had success in every other place that they've been to, tons of boots on the ground. They would roll in and just flood an area. And I think, over time, they just thought that was the norm.
Right.
And when they came up into Bakuba, the insurgents that were operating in and around that area let them know that, they weren't going anywhere.
Yep.
And they got their attention pretty quick.
It was fairly quick. I remember them rolling in. Because I remember that when they came up from Baghdad, and it was like, because we had like some convoy escorts and securities to get them up in the area, and just talking to the guy, and just the communication, the difference in communication between talking to you guys and then them was a little bit different. There was some frustration at first, some growing pains, right? Because we had established that relationship and built the rapport. And by supporting for the last 4 or 5 months, and then they were just rolling into station. But I think after about a month or so, we solidified a decent working relationship with them. Yeah.
Now we had troops, ground troops surgeon. You guys didn't have any pilot surgeon to help you all, right?
No. So they surged a battalion. So the guys that were supposed to relieve us at the 12-month mark surged into, I believe they went into BIOP. And that was 1-3 Vipers. And then they surged there, and then they stayed and we stayed. But they were in a completely different location from us. But they went into Baghdad because they were supposed to relieve us.
So once the strikers had come up, that was like a game changer, because we just went, like, originally the strikers were assigned to 3rd Brigade, but then they flipped the script, and we wound up, well, even though the battalion was assigned to 3rd Brigade 1st Cav, Alpha and Bravo Company were assigned to the striker units.
Okay.
And they took us in like their own. They were absolutely phenomenal. And then we had developed a pretty good working relationship, and we started getting after it, like clearing missions, cordon and searches, clearing missions upon clearing missions. The op tempo started picking up even more so. What did it look like from up in the air with all these additional troops?
It was controlled chaos. It's straight up controlled chaos, right? You're checking in, and you're getting pushed from company to platoon, to squad. You're checking in, you do some work with a squad, they'd push you back up to the platoon, and the company would push you down to somebody else. You're within one battle space, but you're just operating because there was multiple missions going on as everybody was pushing through. So it was good. But it was controlled chaos. It was fun.
So the clear hold build, like, we started popping up combat outposts left and right, all over, and start putting the cities, Old Bakuba, New Bakuba, Trier, Biarritz, like everything was on lockdown. When did you guys start to see a noticeable shift and decline? Well, actually, let me back up. Where did you think that the end, like, all these insurgents were coming from?
Well, my thought, I know they were doing simultaneous operations in Baghdad. Mm-hmm. You had stuff going on in Sadr. Mm-hmm. where's water, least resistance of water kind of flows out. So they were flooding into that area. My opinion, when you lock down Baghdad, and Baghdad being as big as it is, and Sadr City, and you're locking down Sadr City and you're pushing everybody out.
Yeah.
Well, Bakuba is just the next flow north. It's you got friggin' Tampa right there, and and it was just an easy way. And you had the Palm Groves, which is easy freedom to maneuver.
Yeah.
You're not having to worry about ISR, because at that time we really started using ISR assets there. So you had that going on. So you're able to maneuver stuff up and down in the green zone. So it was my opinion, and said at the time I was a W-2, but it was I think that's really why that everything converged. It was like everything converged there, because geographically it's easy for it to be a spot to converge on.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly. I think that would be my assessment. Is the surge went into Ramadi, Fallujah area, Baghdad, and they're just like us, right? We're going to reinforce success, and they were having some success up there, and that's where they're going to send their troops. How many insurgents do you think? And I'm trying, because here's the reason why I ask this. If you wiki Bakuba, the battle for Bakuba, it's like 400 or 500 insurgents in that area. And I have a hard time just knowing how many are just the battalion. What the enemy killed in action and captured was, I just can't jive with 400 or 500 enemy in that area.
I think so. I think that's a skewed number in the aspect of if that's what they're using, because I think you had their version of surges, right?
Yeah.
They would surge in and out and go to other areas because it was being coordinated. I think at some times you had over 1,000, because you'd have large clusters of military-age males in certain areas, and it was all over and you had it locked down. So it's not like they had the freedom to maneuver from one side to the other, but you're dealing with large clusters of, hey, 20 guys, 30 guys here, 10, 15 guys there, 20 guys there, vehicles coming in and out, resupply going through, palm groves, the bongo trucks, the dishkas, the cylinders, the welding cylinders that they started bringing in for the EFPs. Was it the EFPs? Is it the
EFPs?
Yeah, EFPs. From and so and then you had the Iranian influence, all that Iranian influence going on there. So, a lot, 1,000, maybe more. And then you had 82nd come in there, and they started operating in the green zone, and they were taking a lot of casualties as well in that area.
Yeah, and I know that's kind of an unfair question, but at the same time, it's like, if I ask that question enough, somewhere I'm going to be able to bracket, somewhere in there, we're going to stumble over a pretty accurate picture. And you're not too far off the mark. Very, very few people say less than 1,000.
Yeah.
I think it's always north of 1,000. So the surge comes in. We got the place on lockdown. If you look at like a lot of our executive summary reports, like June, things really started to taper off when it comes to like enemy engagements, and operations pick up, but enemy activity starts to taper off. When did you guys start seeing a significant change in civilian patterns, and like whether civilization was coming back to some level of normality?
June, July timeframe? I think that's right, because it was all of a sudden we'd go downtown and Bakuba was alive. You'd have the markets. People were setting up on the markets, and like the civilians were coming back, and you'd have, the carts, and they're selling things, kids were out there running around again. Where prior to that, there was no normal pattern of life. You didn't see the normal stores set up in front of their houses. It was, you showed up and it was very, U.S. forces heavy. I don't know if they were indoors, they had located somewhere else, but as the control of that that area was just locked down, it looked like the friendly population started coming out, and you just saw normal patterns of life. And that was during that time frame.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys were able to see that.
Yeah.
You know,
It was-
I think some people were deprived of that. You know, they just came in and seen like death and destruction,
Right.
and helped with it, but they never got to see the fruits of their labor and the sacrifice of a city coming back to life, or
Yeah.
what was left of a city, right? What, was it evident that Bakuba from the air looking down, looking at Tahrir and Bakuba, like it was a battle zone?
It did. It did. I remember, so we had one engagement, or it was a series of engagements one day. And when we left at like 2:00 in the morning, maybe a little bit later than that, it was probably about, it was about 2 a.m. We turned back, and like the city of Bakuba was on fire. It was like,
Nice.
it was. And that's when you're like, oh my goodness, there was definitely some destruction going on. You know, it was troops in contact. Some of the outposts were taking heavy fire. We showed up. There's 20 groups of, or multiple groups of like 20 military age males, maybe smaller. They're all running around. We found a bongo truck with a dishka in there. We shot that thing up. We put Hellfire in there. A few groups of men fired on that one. Houseborne ID, blew that up. You know, we landed, refueled, rearmed. They put more missiles on. We take off right out of the FARP, and as we're making a left turn, we're shooting more missiles. I remember our Army guys looking up and like, I just loaded that missile, and now that missile is going into Bakuba. Fired some more, circled around. More guys came out, shot them with 30 millimeter.
And I mean, and you guys are probably seeing ground fire too, tracers.
Oh, tracers. And then the ground force is like, hey guys, you're taking heavy fire from this area. And that's when we found the Dishka. And then you swooped over there, and then there's this barrel, and it's super hot, and you're like, okay, that's what they used to shoot at me. So then you're up like, all right, I'm taking that off the battle space. So then we, engaged that, and then as we were done, we were mission complete, exhausted, mind you. We're just beat.
Adrenaline,
and just now we're
time.
crashing. We're flying, and we're flying home. We look back and we're like, oh wow, and it's just fire after fire after fire. I think they Normandy, because they set up the missiles up at Normandy, didn't they? Yeah, up at FOB Normandy, and they shot a Gimler.
Yeah, the Gimlers.
Yeah, they shot a Gimler at a building, and then it wasn't the right building, so they shot the one next to it.
They just fire. They just fire.
So, but yeah, so that was like when you're like, man, there's definitely and it was an interesting situation when we flew back.
Yeah, wow, that'd be quite the picture. I know, just like being back on Warhorse, sometimes you just hear the 25 mic or an explosion, 25 mic, machine gun fire, tracers up over the tree line. It's just like, this is where it's at. So, civilian life starts to come back in. You guys get the word that you guys are going to rip out. Mm-hmm. The unit that you guys rip with come in. Are they thinking they're rolling into like World War III?
Yeah, because
gonna get after it.
Oh yeah, because we've been painting the picture, sending them videos, showing them what we were doing, and they're pumped. They're super excited. And a few of us actually, we were able to get some of them in the engagements during the handover, which was really good, which was like unheard of. We brought them down, was able to get them some engagements, and then pretty much at that point, talking to them a few years later, it was like we handed over them the fight, and then that was it. It just dried up, which was fine because we were heading home at that point.
Yeah, and I think again that's one of the reasons why we're talking to you guys. You and 112 had that very unique visual of before, during, and after.
Yep.
And not too many people got to see it soup to nuts, that's for sure. So Bakuba, you've been and you're still serving, right?
Yeah.
And multiple deployments. How does Bakuba stack up to anything that you've experienced since then?
So Bakuba was extremely kinetic. Um, it was out of all the fights, I've been around a couple times, Afghanistan twice. Afghanistan is a lot, definitely, sparser area. We had Helmand and all that kind of stuff, but different. It wasn't like an urban environment, Helmand,
Yeah.
it's sprawled out, but it wasn't like a city, right? But you had I think this one was it was very kinetic. It was just fast paced, hyperkinetic. So very, constantly changing, dynamic. You didn't know what you were going to get into when you checked in. So it was an extremely challenging environment to fight in, but it was extremely rewarding at the same time, right? And then, it's just yeah. So
How did the Bakuba fight shape you professionally?
oh yeah, so it was my foundation. So as a front seater, PI, then made PC, and then went right back to the front seat. It made me very mission focused and training focused.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we had the right tools when you initially got there to be successful. I just think you had the right people in the right place to allow us to grow into that mission and become very successful because you had key leaders allowing, and they were assuming some risk. They assumed some risk when we went out there and we shot and we fought and that kind of stuff. And that allowed us to develop TTPs, which then we used throughout that mission, right? So how it's shaped me is everything I've done in my career has been very tactically focused. How does what we're doing today affect us on the battlefield? And if it doesn't affect us on the battlefield, if it's not going to make us better gun pilots, it's not going to make us better Apache pilots, if it's not going to allow us to support the ground units like we need to, then it's not important. And I really don't focus on that. So everything I've done is very tactically focused.
You said that some of the leadership assumed risk.
Mm-hmm.
There's some leadership that is risk avert, like they like zero. Like,
yeah.
no, we're not going to do that, and that sometimes I think stifles realism in training. Right? It stifles the initiative. It puts people in boxes where they can't push the limits. What do you think gave the leadership the ability to assume a little bit of risk?
Oh, I think you had a good brigade commander, battalion commander. I think the leadership at the senior level wanted, when it's easy to assume some tactical risk when you're losing 100 guys a month, right?
Yeah.
You're as a leader or a commander, if I'm having to, send guys home, and not the manner that I want to send them home, then I'm willing to assume some risk because, hey, at the end of the day, it's making sure that all our guys get home safe. So I may push the envelope a little bit. I may assume some risk on giving the Apaches a little bit more authority to go do what they need to do because I want to make sure my guys get home. And I think that was at every level, and that came down from the president. Hey, that's why we're surging, because I want to give them the tools to be successful to be able to end this mission.
Yeah.
And it worked out that way, And then within the battalion, I'll probably screw up this saying, but our master gunner, Rusty, made a lot of us front seaters memorize, and it was like the mission of the attack pilot. And it was a quote from a World War II Stuka pilot, I believe. That was, I believe he was out there and he was like hunting tanks during World War II, right? And it was like the mission of attack pilot is to hunt, track, attack, and destroy the enemy. And only this way can a skillful attack pilot display his abilities to the full. But if you tie him to a confined task or you rob him of his initiative, you take away the best qualities. And that's the passion of a hunt and the aggressive spirit. And I may have messed up the words here and there, but that was made us memorize that in 2004. And I've made some of my guys memorize that. But it's true. You confined us to if you confined us to a specific task and you don't give us the freedom to maneuver and go out there, then you are taking away the passion of the hunt. And at the end of the day, it's about the hunt. It's about going out there and getting after it. And that's what's so cool about being an Apache pilot. That's why I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
I freaking love it.
Yeah, I see that. One that's some like combat poetry right there in my thoughts. And
I probably butchered it. I know I did. I got a few words with it, but the overall intent was there. It was an 80%.
yeah, and I can vibe off like I can pick it up, man. I can totally understand that you absolutely love what you do and are doing what you love. So that's not a lot of people get to experience that.
Yeah.
And all right, how has it changed you personally, that deployment?
Ooh. So, well, we all have had issues, right?
Yeah.
We all, yeah, I think I had some anger issues for a few years after that deployment, because it was back to back, went to Afghanistan right after that. And then came back, and then I had to deal with some anger issues and, deal with some demons within, right? But we've all been there.
Yes, we have.
But I think it's just, I don't know, man. It's just get clarity, kind of like, hey, what we do is real. What we do
Yeah.
is important, and it's not just what I'm doing or as the patch. It's what you guys, it's what everybody, if you're on the battle space and you're fighting, it's extremely important to be proficient at your task, at whatever your warfighter skill is. You've got to be, a master of that, because you don't know when you're going to be asked to go.
Yeah.
You don't know what they're going to ask you to do. You guys weren't thinking you were going to go into Bakuba when you got to Kuwait. We didn't think the fight was going to be like the way it was, right?
Yeah.
I don't think any single one of my deployments has ever gone to plan. There's always been some sort of, wrinkle or change of mission or whatever. And that's not the time to get ready for it. You should, if you do all the hard work in the beginning, I think it makes it easier. When not easier, it just makes you don't have to worry about the little things, and allows you to focus on the mission.
I love the fact that you just said that, because this morning they're getting ready for the Super Bowl down in New Orleans, right? And they had Tom Brady on the news this morning, and they were asking him about like what the teams are going through, and he said, "Hey, man, these teams aren't doing big things now that they're in the Super Bowl. I see, like, you don't do big things when it's time to do big things. You do big things well in advance of getting to a point where it's a big thing, right? So a lot of that prep work, I think on a personal level, on a professional level, like if you start doing what you have to do to be successful well in advance, I think when it is time to do big things, you're set, you're positioned the way you need to be positioned to execute in a grand fashion. And I think something else that helps and is if you give it and you've done all the things that you need to do, like you're describing, because the enemy gets a vote, man.
Absolutely.
The enemy gets a vote, and if the enemy is successful, I think some people can live a life of regret if they haven't been doing all that hard work at the front end. And they skip, they cut a corner, and the enemy gets a vote. Now you're in a position where you have the should-haves, the would-haves, and could-haves versus just doing that hard work up front. So
I agree. No regrets, not even one letter.
Yeah, I think that's why I sleep good at night, mostly. Now you're in a little bit more of a unique position since your son is a pilot.
Yeah.
So when you look at all the future aviators and they stumble upon this debrief, one word of wisdom or a words of wisdom that you can give them, if we haven't already talked about it.
I talk to my son all the time about this. Train hard. Train hard, and because if you train hard in a training environment, when you're out there and you fight hard, it's not as bad. And that's happened to me multiple times, right? Yeah. You get after it and you train hard when the situation goes kinetic, and it will, then you have something to fall back on. Infantry guys, they do their battle drills. They do, battle drills left and right. They're doing their shooting. They shoot their shooting drills. So when they get into a fight, they don't have to think about the basic stuff. They can just focus on the enemy.
Yeah.
And that's when I tell the guys, I'm like, if you've got that aspect nailed down, then when the enemy does have a vote and they start throwing things at you, you can react quickly. So that's really when it comes down to it. Because I tell the reason why I'm still in doing this is because I've got skin in the game. Not only do I have all my guys that are young, but my son does this, right? So I want to make sure that I leave Army Aviation. Sounds cheesy, but I leave it better. I had an old platoon sergeant tell me back in 1994, and he was an old Vietnam guy, had been promoted to sergeant, like staff sergeant multiple times, been demoted, and he told me, he was like, hey, as a
I think I had the same squad leader, right?
And he's like he became an MP, and I'm like, well, why'd you become an MP? And he's like, well, if I couldn't beat him, might as well join him, right? But
hey,
he told me, he's like, always improve your fighting position.
always.
No matter what, always improve your fighting position. So if you leave your fighting position better than you found it, then you've done something better, because it's not about you. It's about how you lead the Army. And and I tell the guys, the fighting position could be anything. It could be your unit. It could be the fridge. It could be your comms. It doesn't matter what it is. But if you just leave it just a little bit better, and everybody does that, we're better off as a whole.
Yeah, I fully agree on that one. I'm gonna throw a new one out there. What's some of the challenges right now going from like being in the position that you're in now, knowing like 2 decades of war plus to like right now, and I don't want to say it's complete peacetime. I mean, your son just came back from Iraq, right? And I'm sure there's levels of danger over there, but it's not like we're in like a 2-front war. What's some of the challenges right now?
There's a lack of experience within the organization, because you've had a huge exit from the GWAT guys getting out.
Yeah.
So there's W3s, W4s are getting out.
Yeah.
There are a few senior guys left. But you go to a battalion now, and you walk the halls, and it's nothing but lieutenants, captains, W1s, W2s, and there's barely any senior leadership for warrant officer wise at the company level, and minimal experience at the battalion level, where when we went through, we had the W4s, we had the senior W3s that had some deployments under them or a lot of experience. Yeah. So you were able to push the envelope a little bit because you had that experience to fall back on and get comfortable pushing the envelope, because you had the experienced guy in the back seat. That's not there anymore. So when you have inexperience and inexperience, they're going to be very hesitant, right? And then you look at the leadership, and because the leadership sees this, they become very risk adverse.
Yeah.
So as a whole, we're not really pushing the envelope and getting better at our warfighting skills, because they're very risk adverse. Yeah. And that's what I see, right? And then they become very reliant on technology. And at the end of the day, technology is great, but when it fails, can you get after it old school? And I'm not saying go back to grease pencil on the canopy, when you're rolling in and shooting rockets or anything, but I'm just saying understanding the basics, Yeah,
it's almost like we're falling into looking at it from an infantry guy, pre 9/11, God forbid you picked up your rifle and did some reflexive fire or moving and shooting, and if you did do some sort of that was a risk. That was a huge risk to sit there and do, dismount of infantry, cover me while I move, just basic stuff. It was so canned and so scripted, and it's because we didn't have a reality to attach that to. Right. So people, I think, were a little bit risk averse. So hopefully, yeah.
I had a general. So a few years back, I went to this tactics course to the Marine Corps, and this general got up there and he was talking to all these senior weapons tactics instructors, and he's like, be be brilliant in the basics. And this isn't my quote.
Brilliant in the basics. I like it.
If you're brilliant in the basics, right, then when the shit gets hard and complex, it's not as bad.
Yeah.
You can deal with it. And really, that's what it comes down to. It is if you're brilliant in the basics, no matter what it is, like you said, shooting, flying the aircraft, employing your weapons systems, operating comms, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But if you're good at that, then when the enemy has a vote and they start throwing things at your way, you can react quickly.
Yeah,
but if you can't master that, then you'll never be good.
Yeah, if the basics are covered, then you're able to operate at that higher level,
Yeah.
versus just
Yeah.
skimming the wave times. Cool. Man, I could sit here and talk to you for hours. Unfortunately, we don't have that.
Yeah.
However, I do think this does complete your debrief, bro.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Brother, that was good.